for that. Our client-based workshops we've done in person, and we've been actually using Zoom, and we have used the breakout rooms. So I do see the potential for instance, for brief action planning for the practice, the group work or partner work to actually happen in breakout rooms. It is a little more challenging to, as the facilitator, to go, because you can go into the rooms and help them, but it takes a little longer and you're going in and out, so it interrupts some of that a little bit. But there is that feature, especially on Zoom, to do that. And this Zoom is the platform we have been working with, so we spent quite a lot of time getting used to it and the features that we can use on it. And we actually have a purchased license for Zoom. So that's what we've done so far.
Yeah. So if it would be okay with folks, I'd love to just get everything on the table, and then we can continue to tap into everybody's great knowledge, and we can even demonstrate the breakout rooms in Zoom for those of you who aren't familiar and are curious about that. But so right now I've got, what can we do with webinars, especially brief action planning? How do we handle practice? How do we handle breakout rooms? And Andrea's given us some good tips there. What other things are people wondering and they want to make sure we talk about today? We've got an hour, a little bit less than an hour now together.
Yeah, it's Mel. Just like I mentioned before we started recording, really is just that aspect of doing the more complicated skill development. So I'm thinking particularly of MI, right? So having those sessions face to face is one thing. How do we do that well in the virtual world?
Yeah. Okay. Great. Good. Other things we should get on the table here.
It's Jessie Penticton. I wonder too about the logistics of recording and not, if there's any guidelines about whether to do that. I think one of the nice things about the MI that we've experienced is people do a lot of personal sharing. And of course, one of our ground rules is, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So I just want to make sure that there's some guidelines about not recording, or if there are, then do we change those guidelines? Because if someone tells a personal story, I don't want them to ever not know that there's record of it, or think that there might be, of course, right? So.
Okay, thanks for that. Got that one down there.
Thanks, Jessie.
Other thoughts before we start? I'm sure others are going to come up as we go along. Okay, maybe we should take off. There's somebody else? What?
No, you're good. I'm just watching the chats.
Oh, thanks, Lori. Excellent. Good. And that is definitely one of the things that we have learned doing virtual training, is to having two people in the room is a good help, because somebody can be watching the chat, watching what's going on, and deal with any technical difficulties, as you saw, while you're getting going. So thank you for that. Okay, so first, maybe, Lori, we could talk about what CCMI has been doing and what we're thinking, because we've had some of the same experiences and same concerns as I've heard from other people. So for those of you who are brief action planning trainers, or maybe who don't know, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right now and show you that you do have webinars, versions of brief action planning training in your online course page. So you should be seeing my screen. I'm a Mac user, so if things look a little weird for you, that's why it may look a little bit strange. And this is when I log on to our online resource page and where we do our web-based training, this is what my page looks like. So you will see, if you're a brief action planning trainer, you will have this icon here. And if you click on the trainer resources and you scroll down, there's actually webinar versions that are available to you. So it's telling me I need to resume here because I've been here. So I'll just go in that way so you can see that stuff. And so right over here, BAP trainer materials on the left there, number 2, when you scroll down in that area, you have BAP by webinar. So you can see me looking at my second screen here, BAP by webinar. And so if you click on that page, you will actually get a slide set that was designed for webinar, some tips, and 2 webinars that tell people how to use these materials. So all of that is there for you. There's a webinar version of the slides, etc. So if you want to do BAP by webinar, there's a training plan, etc. So you can totally do that by webinar. If anybody's used those in any of the stuff. you
Hmm. I'm
I've done
curious.
BAP by webinar several times. Maybe I'll just tell you a bit of a story about my most recent experience because it was really, really exciting. I got to work with a group of people who are peers. And so they're going into actually a research project to train peers or to work with peers in health coaching. And these are people with spinal cord injury. And so I was training people, some of whom were quadriplegic, and doing the webinar-based version of brief action planning training. And we were doing it via Zoom. So we all had cameras, which was really exciting. And we spread it out over 4 sessions. So they were about hour and a half long each. And then they had assignments in between the sessions for things that they were doing or thinking of practicing. And they participated in phone-based and Zoom-based practice and feedback sessions, and have been doing brief action planning certification. And so we found it was really great to get to know them. They were scattered all over the eastern part of the United States doing this, and we were doing that training right as the pandemic started. And of course, with them being high-risk people, they became even more isolated than usual during that time. So having our group get together every Thursday was really a great comfort to everybody too. So that's just a little bit that I've experienced. Anybody else had a chance to do BAP? I've heard people do some overviews.
Hmm.
This is Karen. I haven't done the BAP on webinar, but I did look at the resources and the videos and I found them really helpful. It seems like a great way to do it. It's really, really well laid out, and I look forward to trying it if and when we can do that in IH.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Connie, can I ask please, and this may sound silly, but when I go to my link to CCMI, it tells me that I can't access it because I had to access it before the end of March, and it won't even allow me to get to the resources or anything.
Okay, so probably the best thing to do is to email one of our admin support people and find out why your access isn't working. And it may be that we forgot to click anything when you turned in your paperwork, because every year we have an expectation that we're going to get some paperwork from you about your training status, and we may have just forgotten to flip a switch on our end.
Supposedly I'm good till 2021. So.
Okay, so
Okay.
it just sounds like a glitch on our end. So Nancy, just email, and you can email any of the admin team or just info@centercmi.ca. We'll put that in the chat box and just say, this is my problem, and help me out here.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks for letting us know that.
Connie, it's Terry Lee from Vancouver. That just brings up another question. I'm not sure whether this is the correct time to ask it or not, but as far as certification, ongoing certification for our trainers, we need to complete at least 1 session per year, right?
And
So
we're
is
waiving
there
that
any-
for 2020.
Yeah.
Oh, are you? Okay. that's
Yeah,
good.
we know
Thank
that
you.
this is a really unusual year, and that many of you may not have a chance to do things this year, and we'll see what next year brings, frankly, right? Yeah, and so some of you were bringing up practice. We know most clinicians use these skills on the phone, or now increasingly are using them in video calls and video interactions. And so I have been doing some video practice and feedback, as well as we've done phone feedback, as you know, as all of you know, all along. I really like doing video practice and feedback. You get to see people's facial expressions. My biggest issue is my graduated lenses, so I often have to do this so that I can see people on the screen and not have to look like I'm really snobby, because my focus point is at a different place in my glasses. But being able to see the body language, and I don't know as a trainer if you've ever heard people say something like, oh, I couldn't see them, so I did a bad job, or it was hard for me, or I'm frustrated, which is true. We have that frustration, but the video makes a big difference. And then we can also talk about how to apply the skills in the virtual environment, which is interesting to think about. Yeah, I see a bunch of you nodding your heads. Yeah. Some of you are health literacy trainers, and we are currently working on a health literacy webinar-based live set version, and we haven't talked yet about if we thought other people would be looking for access to those. So if folks are wanting that, let us know. The health literacy and brief action planning have some good straightforward skills like Melanie brought out. They're not really complex. So teaching Ask, Tell, Ask, teaching Teach Back via webinar and with video practice and feedback is fairly straightforward. So that's, we're feeling pretty comfortable doing those by webinar. Aura would love to have a health literacy virtual slide set. Yeah, we're moving our webinar-based slide sets to the widescreen too, because that looks better on a webinar. Yeah, the BAP set's the old way. Okay.
So when it comes to offering the, I haven't seen it. I'm just trying to access it now, see if I can get the videos. I know for GoToWebinar, you have to load them up on the platform before, and then click them. You can't have them embedded within the presentation. But that's fine. I think you can have quite a few videos loaded up. Is there things like polls and a kind of interactive things going on with that?
Yeah, we have not built those into the webinars yet because it varies by what platform you're using, you know, right?
Yeah.
Because, most of them do have some kind of a polling thing. I personally have used WebEx, Articulate, GoToMeeting, and GoToWebinar. I am not a fan of GoToWebinar. And Zoom is my favorite platform because it has the most versatility, and I see some of you nodding your heads. GoToWebinar is just too formal. The interactivity is really low. I don't like it. We sometimes have to use it because of the contracts we have where they don't want people to be recorded, etc. Articulate I don't like very much either, or some of the other classroom. I've been on some of the other classroom based ones that are really kind of hard to use. But Zoom I really like. And you can do polling either in the moment. Some systems you have to set up your polling in advance. But yeah, polling is definitely something to consider. As far as videos go, remember if you show a video while you're presenting a webinar, it's dependent on your speed of the video, the upload, and also their speed in receiving. And so if it's really jerky, it's a little challenging. Some people say people will forgive bad video, but they won't forgive bad audio. So thinking about whether or not your audio is actually coming across understandably, yeah, that's really important. And you might want to experiment with people you're working with. Yeah. Really good points.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. And the BAP in the virtual environment, Helen, if you go to those previously recorded webinars, you'll get some tips in there and watch those webinars. Yeah. Okay. Go for it.
Can I just ask, so many of the videos are pretty, I think, super important and valuable part of the education. And so I mean, what's the answer? We just say cross your fingers, or do it or don't do it, or try it, and if it's not working, then don't show the rest, or do
That's what we've done.
Send the links in advance and say, hey everybody, okay, click on link 1 and watch on your own.
Yes, all of the above.
All of it, just Jessie. And it depends too on what you've landed on to use in interior health. I don't know if you guys have landed on one particular platform. Zoom, okay. So our learning, Connie, was, and I'll just share this with everybody if you want to hear it, is when you do the videos, if you want to, you just test it ahead of time with someone else. So we did a bunch of test runs ahead of time with our internal team to see what the speed was and stuff like that. And we can't necessarily help what's on the other end. I think, I don't know, I'm making this presumption. Inside the health authorities or in the LHINs, would most of the people be watching it off their work computers?
I think it would be, I mean, I see you, Mel, bobbing your head. It really depends, and it will depend on the staff we're hitting at the time. Whether people if we're hitting a group of people who are permitted to work from home, if we're hitting a group of staff, it'll be super 50-50.
Okay, so that's kind of what our world has been too, right? Because it's been a mixed bag. It's not been consistent across the board. So But I must say, Connie, so far we've had pretty good experience using videos within Zoom.
Yeah, and the other thing we do is we do a tech test with people
Yeah.
before we start our webinar program. So we invite them to an hour-long session, like 2 weeks before we found is about the ideal time. And then we check out everybody's technology. In our California project we're working on right now, we found out if people logged in through their work settings, too much was blocked because of their firewall. So they actually had to log in, you know, on their individual or personal accounts to be able to access some of the features of some that we were doing. So the tech test has saved our bacon so many times. Then you can also find out if people have cameras. And so then, because a lot of the, depending on what you're doing, some of the activities may really depend on them being able to see each other. And then you can troubleshoot the whole camera situation. And luckily we have admin staff that are really very tech savvy. So they take that from us. They work with people. And luckily our sponsor was willing to buy video cameras or make sure they had a video ready work laptop to use. So we've seen needing a lot of upfront time to get people ready for webinar-based learning.
And even doing, teaching them how to use chat, how to, you know, raise their hand under the reactions inside of Zoom, if Zoom's the one you're going to use, at whatever medium you're going to, platform you're going to use, just familiarize them with it in a orientation, tech test, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and the other thing too is some of you know CCMI uses our online course pages to register people, and then that's where we have a privacy statement, because some of you were talking about, you know, what do we do about privacy. So then, like for our California project, it's a CEU based program, so it's continuing education units down there for them, and so we have to record it so other people can watch it if they miss it. So then we've let them know that these parts will be recorded. We are not recording our practice and feedback sessions though. And when we go into breakout rooms, those are not recorded. So whatever they share in the breakout room is still private. So that works out pretty well in that particular way. So since we've said breakout rooms several times, I'm going to go ahead and send you all the breakout rooms for those of you who aren't familiar to them. The Zoom platform lets you send people to breakout rooms. It'll be just like a breakout room. You can either assign people in advance or you can let it do it randomly. And I'm going to split you up into 4 rooms automatically. So you're going to zing out into a room. You'll see a little notice come up that says you're being sent to this breakout room. And then I'll just leave it open for a minute. You can say hi to each other. And then you'll get a notice that says in a minute your breakout room's going to close. So we've been using these for anything you would usually use a breakout room for. If you want a small group discussion or a duo or a trio practice, we've been doing that. And we also usually have a couple of trainers on board. So trainers, and maybe Lori, if you will just not join your breakout room, and trainers can jump in and out of the rooms to visit people to see how they're doing. So here you go to breakout rooms.
Yeah, go to your room.
Yeah, go to your room. Just watch that and go ahead, join that room. Great. We've got Jesse and Helen are still here. So go ahead and click that little thing there.
Join.
Gotten distracted. Yeah. Click the join button there. Jesse and Helen. Okay.
There we go.
Okay.
Jesse, maybe
she may have gotten called away.
Yeah.
So you're going to go ahead and bounce into a room, Lori?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if you wanted to meet
or not. Yeah, go ahead and bounce in just to show them that you can check in and out. Welcome back. Hey, everybody.
I only got to one room.
I know. So welcome back. So it was Natalie, who'd never been on Zoom before. I don't know if other folks said this is their first time using Zoom too. We've got a couple of breakout rooms that are still functioning here. They'll be coming back soon.
So when you give the notice in Zoom, it gives a minute for the folks to come back. And when our experience has been, some people will come back right away as soon as they see the notice. Others will wait and finish what they're doing and then come back.
Yeah. And the other thing too is if you're doing an activity that takes a varying amount of time, you can just tell them to come back to the main room when they're done. And then if you, and then you can close the rooms for the people who are taking a while. So
Have the time
All
to
right.
do these things, right?
everybody's back. All right.
Cool.
Welcome. And so I could send you back into those same rooms again because it saves it for me, or I could mix you up and send you back into different rooms. So lots of different ways you can do that.
And Connie, I'm not familiar with Zoom. Do you get to assign groups or is it a random mix?
Either. You can choose. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, some projects I work on, we actually have we'll say have all of them, nurses go practice over here and the pharmacists over here, or we'll have a breakout session where people are talking about different things or different sites. You can break them up or you can just do it random. So yeah. And Stephanie's very familiar with that.
I would think, I really like in Zoom that there's a breakout room ability. I think that's the only way you could do the practice part of BAP or MI for that matter.
Yeah.
I can't imagine trying to do it any other way if we're doing it virtually. So it's interesting that Zoom's so good at that. I don't know if WebEx has that ability or not.
WebEx, you can set up different rooms in WebEx. I've been doing WebEx conferences where they do. It's not quite as nimble as Zoom, but you do have that capability.
Connie, I think this is Laura. I think it would be best if people have camera.
Yes.
So when during the practice, if we do break our room and do the practice this way, we can see each other's facial expression and everything. So
yes. Yeah, we have actually been, for our project we're doing in California, we're requiring that they have cameras, and the request is that they have it on about 80% of the time. I mean, we know sometimes you get called away or, your dog, jumps up on, on your laptop or something. And so we understand that sometimes you need to turn off your camera, but it's kind of one of those things where we're all setting the new, social norm for how you do this sort of thing. And Stephanie probably remembers from the early days of the project in Washington State about, it's part of their reimbursement. They get paid if they use their cameras. She's nodding her head.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, quite the incentive.
And we also have, how we do the ground rules near the beginning of any workshop. You can put that in there as if at all possible. Please have your video camera on, right? Yeah. To really encourage people to have their video camera on. People can be quite shy and feel really weird about it initially. And so just to help normalize it can really be helpful.
Oh, that's a good suggestion for
Yeah. And it's just having your mute off if you're not talking, that kind of thing, or mute on when you're not talking. I see a question here, Connie. I'm looking over here because I have two screens. So every time you see me looking over here, it's not that I'm daydreaming off into the distance, okay? I'm just looking at the screen. Terry Lee said, can you teach us what the operation of breakout is?
Yeah, and you will not be able to see it as a participant. So when you're a host, you will have a whole nother control panel. So that's one of the things, I think Lori and we probably spent 3 hours or more with our other team members getting used to Zoom and trying all the features. And then we would later on have a question about, oh gosh, can we do this? And then we would go back into Zoom with and invite other team members so we could test things out. So we started off feeling fairly comfortable with it. But yeah, when you're a host or a co-host, so right now Lori and I are both co-hosts, so either of us can do any of the controls. So we have a whole other control panel down at the bottom that has the breakout rooms, and it's super easy. And Zoom has a lot of really nice videos, really good help. But yeah, get some buddies to practice with you.
Jesse, yes, you can share your screen.
I can share my screen, but you will not be able to see my controls because it doesn't want you to see what I'm doing.
Yeah, so we can't show you that. The first time we did Zoom, I got a little bit kerfuffled because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm trying to do this and they can see it. And then I kind of, about a minute into it, realized they can't see what I see. I only just see the PowerPoint, right? And then I kind of whew, relaxed and then went into the, switched my brain over.
Yeah. No, it's pretty interesting. So that's Zoom, and that's why we actually like Zoom, because it does have those features. I'm really aware that we have other questions and things probably to talk about. We talked a bit about logistics of recording and not personal sharing. I told you how we're handling that. Is there anything there about privacy or sharing that people are thinking about? Okay. All right. Breakout rooms, we did that. We talked about brief action planning because you have good sets of skills there. We know you want health literacy webinar slides. So let's talk about MI and foundations of MI and teaching that via webinar. CCMI has had to do that because, as I mentioned to Mel before everybody joined, we had some contracts that had time-sensitive things, and so we needed to do something for that. We have the same kind of thoughts about teaching MI via webinar or via other methods. The good news is we know it works. There's actually been a couple of studies, and I've been had conversations with several people who in the past had actually done research on that. And Daniel, and I'm going to forget his last name, one of fellow Mint member trainers who studied that. And so we know it's very possible. And one of the things to think about is when you go back to your training plan, and think about, you know, why you're doing what you're doing. The thing that really changes when you're doing a different, something differently, like virtually, is that activities column, right? Because the why is still there. So your step 1 of your 5-step training, the why do they need this? Do they need this information? Your objectives are still the same. And then it's the activities that you do. And so when you're thinking about moving your training, you have to think about how can I have people have the same experience or as close as possible via this new platform. And so when we went about doing our webinar based, it's okay, but it's not great. And we're moving to having an online based Foundations of MI workshop starting in the fall. So if for those of you who've taken BAP online, it'll be more structured like that, where there's a component online that you read, and then you'll have, you have a faculty member who's going to be guiding along, there's forums, there's discussion groups, and then you will have video practice and feedback sessions, right?
Which likely will, sorry, Connie, to interrupt, but which will likely include the activities that would normally be in part of the Foundations of MI. Because when we go back to the fidelity, like the fidelity and the stoplight method, we want to include, the activities as much as we can, right? Because it's in those activities that we really consolidate our learning.
Yeah. And so we're thinking about how do you do those activities, in a virtual environment. And in the end, what really matters is that people get a chance to learn and try the skills, and we try to build their confidence, and that they can, we have an idea in our head about what level of competency we think people can get to after Foundations of MI, and that's where we want them to get there. Now, if they can, and some people can, if they can do that by reading the book and doing approved practice and feedback sessions, that's marvelous. That's kind of unusual, but some people do. So the online course, we like that way of doing it because then people can spend as much time as they want in the more fact-based and theory-based part of it. And then in the practice and feedback sessions, we can really concentrate on troubleshooting and asking questions about application and actually practicing the skills. So that's the direction we've decided to go with Foundations of MI. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts about that and what you're thinking for yourselves as MI trainers.
It's just, my gut reaction, and I fully acknowledge my bias is like an extrovert. And when we do those like bird personality communication styles, like I'm a penguin, and my gut reaction is impossible. I cannot work virtually. Like, I'm just going to be honest here, and like the fact that I'm being a stick in the mud, but the whole like crux of it is the quick conversation and like people jumping in and saying, oh yeah, this and that and the connection. And I know like my video camera's here and you guys can see and connect with me, but just in my heart, it's not quite the same as being in real life. And so obviously I will be more open-minded and like learn and grow, and I'm totally open to the possibility and we'll try it. But I'm worried it'll fall flat and it won't be as good. And then I think if it's not going to be as good, why don't we just wait a year? and then start them again.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And
But maybe this virtual world is here to stay, so maybe we just really have to find a way to make it work. I don't know. So that's just my honest opinion, is that I'm worried about it.
Thanks,
I
Jessie.
totally appreciate that. Lori and I would much rather be doing face-to-face workshops.
I'm an extrovert, in case you guys haven't noticed.
I'm an introvert, but I fake an
she is.
extrovert well.
You do.
I just have a question. In your experience then when you tried it out, what were your numbers like? Like how many was your maximum participants, or what did you feel was a good number?
So I would have one that's an anomaly just because of the timeline. So I won't even talk about that. We're maintaining the same ratios, 12 people in a group. And so as you know, the things divide up nicely with 6 or 12, right? Yeah. And if you do decide to do that, and if you record sessions, our request would be that any recorded sessions are only for the people who are in that workshop.
Yeah. And I prefer not to record. Just, yeah, I mean, to us, when we talk about any of our online stuff, we want people to come to the in-person. So we don't want to have something floating around for people to just watch the recording. So far, we haven't recorded anything because that's just our philosophy. We want the in-person, and this is just tiding us over until we can get to that point. Yeah.
Makes sense, Andrea.
So Terry Lee just said, she asked a question, will you be offering this way for of delivery for trainers, i.e. the model of training for us to use it? So
We
Terry
will
Lee,
not be offering a webinar version of MI for trainers at the current time. We don't think it's the best way to do it. So that's not our current plan. So we'd be interested in hearing from you what you think. We just, I mean, we're doing it because we have to, because you know, of contractual obligations. We would much rather do a blended learning with an online, with a virtual practice component. But that's our current thinking. So we'd love to hear what you're thinking about. I'm hoping you all can get back to doing face-to-face workshops. The thing that I would encourage you to think about, though, is what do you have that you could adapt that people could use right now? I mean, what better time to help people to learn how to engage with others? I mean, what better time to really emphasize ask, tell, ask or teach back?
and health literacy, you know, especially with all the misinformation that's out there and people's understanding and what is it about, right?
Can I just ask a quick question? I think maybe it's almost the same thing as Terry Lee, but when she was saying, do you think this will be a good way of offering it? And would you, would you share your experience with how you've done it with us? So you just provided the content and then, like, you know, how you gave us the structure for VAP and health literacy virtually. Would you do the same for MI so that we could do that in Interior Health?
Yeah, so just to be really honest with you, it takes a lot of time to adapt this stuff to webinars. So you'll have to add, you know, if you wanted to do something like that, you need to spend 2 or 3 hours per hour of presentation time prepping. Okay, so think about your investment is the first thing I would say. It's taken us tons of time to do it. And so that's one of the reasons why I would, you know, say, really think seriously, do you really need to do this right now? And we've had to make major adaptations to some of the activities to make them work. And it takes a lot of personnel to do it too, because right now we have three staff members on every webinar.
Oh, okay. And would you share that with us, the adaptations that you've made, though?
I'm not sure. I mean, I really, you know, I'm really not sure, because I don't know if we want it out in circulation, because we don't think it's the best way to go.
Yeah, to be honest with everyone, it's not that great.
We're calling it a stopgap.
Yeah, we're calling it a stopgap.
To be totally frank, though, within Interior Health, I don't see us moving to face-to-face interactions for any time in the foreseeable future.
Okay.
From my perspective, what I understand is I mean, people have said up to a year. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think that we're going to be needing to provide people beyond BAP skills sooner than we'll have the ability to do it in the room.
Yeah, so this is what I would suggest. I would suggest that you have people do our online course and then you do the practice and feedback, so that they can learn about adapting it in their setting. Because I really don't think it's, you know, just thinking about our investment and how many hours I have spent doing as the designer, I don't think it's worth your time to try to make the webinar adaptation. I would say, you know, do our online part and you do the practice and feedback, talk to your folks about how this works in their setting and, you know, that sort of thing. I mean, I think that might be a reasonable.
So Connie, can you tell me about the cost that would be associated with that then? Because the idea was have training so we could offer it free of charge.
Yeah,
so I have to go back to the managers with a dollar.
So you,
yeah.
I do not remember off the top of my head. I've just been working in that world like for the last few days, and it has slipped my mind at this moment.
But there would be a fee, am I correct?
It would be in the, yes, Mel. And we are actually, we being me, in the next, probably today, sending emails out to the health authorities to with the units and with the services grid and what things cost. So you'll get that either today or tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. As long as we know that that's an option, then Interior Health can take a look at what is best fiscally and what's the most responsible, right? Whether it be our time to develop or just to send people to the workshop.
Right. Yeah, and so for those of you who aren't in BC, what the folks are talking about now is in BC, the way we have a contract that works where every health authority gets like a certain number of like credits and they work with us. So that's what they're talking about. So for those of you in Washington, Ontario, we have different contractual arrangements with you.
Yeah. The bottom line is though, it's literally a stopgap. It's not great. Like it's good enough.
The webinar version.
The webinar version. And so it's, as Connie said, it takes a lot of time to get it into webinar. And in the end, the learning isn't as robust as it could be. It's entirely up to you what you guys do in your own areas. You know, if you do go ahead and try a webinar or some, you know, other edition of that, maybe a mix, we'd love to hear back from you, how it goes, what you learned, that kind of stuff, right?
It's so interesting, you guys. It's Jen from Interior Health. Just listening to you talk about the fact of having more than one person on when you're facilitating a webinar and that, I'm thinking, oh gosh, we struggle so much to even have two facilitators for face-to-face. It's I can't imagine trying to, I'd be excited to try it, but I can't imagine trying to do it. And then the real reality of it is we barely have capacity to run a face-to-face. In our world, it usually accrues overtime and extra travel time and that. So I really appreciate your honesty about trying to convert it into, you know, a couple hours per each hour of it, because I just can't even see that ever being doable in some of our roles right now. So I appreciate that.
Well, and the other thing too is thinking about the clinicians you're trying to schedule. And this has been something else that's been really difficult. And that's why we think the blended version with online and then the part that's scheduled is your practice, because then they can do the online when they have time, you know, when it fits into their other responsibilities. And so it's interesting because in the, you know, the learning world, that the percent of the blended learning that's self-paced and the percent that's scheduled is something we're really carefully watching. And, you know, when can people do this? Or we're working with a group that of people that do like 24-hour shifts. Because they work in a residential setting, like treatment setting, and so how do you schedule them, right? And so thinking about all those possibilities, and we've tried, like, you know, do you ask for a weekly commitment? I mean, how hard is that? Do you ask for half days? I mean, what do you do? It's just really interesting. Yeah, this is a really interesting new world, and I think all of our challenge is to take advantage of the huge disruption this has caused and come out with a system that really works for what we do. Right?
And Sally said something. Sally, I just want to address what you did in the chat there. You were asking about thoughts or research on demonstrating the spirit of MI in a virtual environment. And in many ways, it's no different than in a face-to-face. It's around the modeling, and we know the modeling of the skills is really important, including the spirit of MI. It may not be as evident or as clear than, you know, in a virtual world as it is in face-to-face, but we do know there's research around telephone outreach to folks, and if you have the warm voice, you do this, have the spirit of MI, all the things that we talk about around respect for autonomy, all those things, it can be conveyed through either phone or it can be conveyed through video as well. Does that answer your question, Sally?
Yes, it does. Any research papers that you can send me, I'd be really interested in
Yeah, Lori was.
in specifically a you know, a virtual environment, because as you said, you can
Lori, you could send her your article.
There's little body language. I guess there's some, but I mean, it's it's a different environment. Yeah,
it is. I can send you an article, Sally, that I published a few years ago, and it was on what we called the surveillance nurse, called them, and they never ever met the people, and they didn't use videos. It was all by phone, and they were able to connect really, really well. Actually, it could be posted maybe even somewhere, Connie.
Yeah, depending on the publishing, we could post it to the website. The other thing that Lori and Danielle and I are working right now is a tip sheet for people who've been trained in MI, just to remind them. And the plans right now are to share that. So, because it's, I mean, think about the things you know from MI. I mean, asking permission. It's huge on the phone and virtually. And agenda setting. It's amazing how few people really understand good agenda setting.
Yeah.
A teach back, we know that decreases no-show rate, right? And so, I mean, there's all these kinds of things that,
Yeah, great.
Lots of really great questions. And then, so, okay. Glad you have these wonderful questions.
Yeah. And Aura did a comment in there in the chat. This is a great point. We're hearing from our local staff that they just have no capacity for any learning right now. You guys can read it.
And so thinking about too, like, what can you do in the moment? One of our great faculty members, which I know Stephanie knows, Dr. Kathy Rhymes, she works with residents in a training program. And so she's used to doing like the hallway consult with people. And so, what little gems of information can you give people? Like when, the person comes to you, like, oh, I just had this most frustrating interaction. It's like, well, tell me a little bit more about that. And then I wonder what would happen if, and just see if you can impart some of your skills just in those coaching moments that you get with staff. I mean, you all are a font of knowledge and information that could be very useful to folks when they're struggling.
And I've already said it, modeling it is one of the strongest ways to modeling the behavior.
Yeah, well, some of us were having a conversation earlier, or was it yesterday? The days blend together now, don't they? About dealing with emotions in the virtual environment. And it turns out to be very similar to how you would deal with it in person by acknowledging it. I see you're crying right now, being quiet, just taking a moment, just telling them you're going to take a moment, that sort of thing. You can't do the things you might do, like, touch them on the shoulder or hand on the Kleenex box. But you can do the other things that you do and let people know it's okay if they want to share what's going on. It's okay if they don't.
And people know if we're present or not present. We're all really good at sensing that, whether we're in person or whether we're on the phone, or because how many of us have been on a phone with someone you think they're not listening to me anymore. They don't have to say anything. We just have that sense about it.
That's really true. Good. What other thoughts do you have as trainers about the challenges facing you right now and what CCMI can, and it turns out there's a couple of can'ts or won't do to support you during this time?
I just have a comment, and I don't know how everyone feels, but I think that as we move to this virtual world, it's nice to connect with other people who are doing similar. So I don't know if you are thinking of continuing this as a series, like a check-in once a month, just to see how folks are doing. And I know we checked in virtually with diabetes in the province, and that was really helpful. We were able to share experiences and how people use the breakout room and stuff. So I would be willing or would like to meet with this group more as we move forward into actually doing it.
That's good to hear, Mel. We're do these trainer things every quarter, I think now. Yeah. And I can see a thumbs up there. Thank you so much for the reaction button. Yeah, that's your reaction button.
Yeah, you can.
You got a hands clapping.
See if you can all, it's all down in the bottom on the right. Yeah, it's got that.
I see.
That's good. Yeah, and we've been doing them about quarterly. We had been doing them more often and found that there was not very many attendees, but there might be, a time period here where it might be better to try a little bit more often and see how folks are going, but we can definitely try that. And I'm seeing a note here from Terry Lee, and excuse me while I look at this.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
I-
there's some great things
Yeah.
online. Yeah. Thanks, Terry Lee.
And Mel, also, if we're not able to do it in this big group format that we're doing today, we could also do it within our IH trained people.
You're 100% right. Yeah, I was thinking the same after I said it. It's just nice to hear maybe from CCMI too, but if we had anything we wanted to bring back, we could.
If there's a need and there's a want, we can certainly support it. Okay.
I don't know, Stephanie, if you're willing to chat at all about what's happening in the U.S. I don't know if you have any input.
Well, kind of living in a more rural area, I feel like it's, anyway, we're changing rapidly. We just got guidance here to be able to open up a little bit more from our very restrictive mode. And I guess for us, yeah, we are a very disseminated workforce, as I'm sure you guys are all as well. And yeah, just looking at what our plans were and really trying to assess what does still make sense for 2020. I mean, even into early 2021, our current guidance, I believe we are fairly confident it's going to go till at least the end of August with the situation as it is. But I have found, and I've been struggling with how to support staff that are in such different roles now. With the change in operations on one end, we've got these telehealth encounters. So doing this with a patient, we're talking about difficulties with training and, difficulties with connecting to a patient virtually. So having best practice guidance for clinicians on how to make this encounter feel valuable to patients. What should you offer to do? What shouldn't you offer to do? My biggest concern and area that I'm trying to work on right now is we have screeners at our front door asking people about their symptoms in a very public place. We try to keep it as private as possible, but a front door is a choke point. And so we've gotten a lot of resistance in that area. And so how can I train, and then our staff, we're hiring maybe 16, 17-year-old kids to do this role. And anyway, that's where I'm struggling right now currently and going, okay, I need a few days with them. Like when we get these very young people helping us, and I think their energy will be great and that will help a lot in some ways, but okay, you're going to be establishing some boundaries and what might you hear and how might you react to that. So, for me, that's where I'm kind of, and I'm not supposed to go in person to train them either. So, what do I ask for? How do I do it? Yeah, all of those things.
Yeah. Boy, some great things to think about. Like, it's like what principles from MI can I help these with these brief moments where they're going to have to establish some kind of a contact with these people, with patients coming in. There's a great article I just read recently about how to help people feel safe in healthcare and stuff. And so, it's a big issue. Yeah. If you want to go and ping me offline, Stephanie, and we can do some problem solving. All right. I know we're almost at the top of the hour,
Yeah,
folks. I think in the chat here too.
Just people are saying goodbye and that they need to be sign off. Mel and Terry, they had to go.
Yeah.
And Sally, are you guys heading out too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It's pretty close. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
So great to see everybody. And so keep in touch, and we'll, sounds like maybe we'll do this again in a couple months or see how it's going. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Great to see you, Andrea. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. That was great.
Okay. Take care.
Bye-bye.